Yeah, you got to do nothing but sit there and talk to us, and I'm really sorry about that.
If only we had something to talk about.
Sadly, it's a dearth.
Superman.
Are we talking about anything other than Superman?
Not yet, apparently.
I mean, I'm happy to.
Crystal, ow, stop it.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Saps. This week, we're joined by Christopher Jones. You know him from drawing a whole hell of a lot of comics. There he is. Look at him waving at you. He has the Green Lantern battery. He was obviously chosen because he has no fear, and he has the helmet of Naboo. I'm just looking at what's behind you. Anyway.
We have not talked to Chris officially since right before the first trailer came out in December of last year.
Oh my God, it was before the very first trailer.
Time.
Trailer for which? Fantastic Four are we talking about? Which trailer?
Superman. And you were asking, I remember that you were asking, or you were saying, I really hope we see something along the lines, I hope we see some Fortress robots. It was one of the things you were hoping to see. And you wrote me, the day that the teaser came out, you messaged me and says, I didn't really think we were going to get Fortress robots.
We full on got Fortress robots.
It wasn't like the big gold door with the keyhole, but I will take the big door with the SG. Like, yeah, okay, yeah. All right.
You know, and apparently he runs into some security issues in this movie, so maybe he'll come up with...
Chad's been saying this for like a while. I was like going, maybe through the course of the movie, because it gets broken into at the end of the movie. He's got a giant golden key. Oh, that would be the best thing ever.
I think it would make more sense if he either relocates it or actually puts it in another, like the quantum unfolding, whatever the thing is, the QEC, is that what it's called?
You want the Fortress to be in a little pocket universe?
Yeah, so it's like even harder to find. I don't know. Yeah. I don't like the idea of the Fortress of Lex knowing where it is, right off the bat.
Okay,
I hope that they fix that.
That's what I'll be very curious to see is not even the question so much of how he gets in, is like, how does he find it in the first place? Why does he know there is a fortress?
Yeah. Isn't it, which version, a TV or movie, had it just, they kept tracking where he started flying? He's always going north. Was that in the reason?
Well, Superman 2 has the whole north, Alpha Fishmonger, north.
Yeah, see, he knows where it is, but how he figured it out, I always figured that he was like, okay.
He's tracking alpha waves. Remember, it's that device that he's got?
Yes.
Oh, yes. That's the alpha waves.
I think even without getting into sci-fi technology, just these days with like spy satellites and stuff, Superman's got to be very careful.
The Superman, I would assume, anytime he's going to the Fortress, goes so freaking fast. Or even
just like, why is he flying in and out of the Daily Planet all the time? What the heck's going on there?
Here's the thought I always have. I mean, again, I'm a purist that goes all the way back. I was born into the Bronze Age, but there's a little bit of silver in what I was reading, especially reprints when I was a kid. So it never occurred to me that Superboy being exclusive to pretty much Kansas was not a big giveaway. And when the adult Superman, he's now in Metropolis, wasn't someone going like, who went from Smallville to Metropolis around that age? Oh, clearly it's Clark Kent, ladies and gentlemen.
One of the problems I had with the Smallville TV show, I would have had almost zero problems with it
because he had no glasses, he had no disguise.
No. If they would have presented it as, this is an alternate reality take on Superman. It's like, what if Superman was just Clark Kent dealing with Superman stuff, but he never like puts on the costume and gets called Superman? But they sold it like it was a prequel. They sold it like this is the path to him being Superman. And not only did it start to get annoying after a while that like all these Superman villains and like half the Justice League shows up in Smallville for some reason.
Yeah, Kansas is a hot spot.
And I guess Metropolis is in Kansas because you can see it.
Boy, do I hate that.
From Kansas.
Boy, do I hate
squint.
And
it's like, all these city, Ma. You mean over there? Yeah, that's where I'm headed.
Not only is there all that stuff, but yeah, given that it's not like Tom Welling looked like a high school freshman when the show started in season 1.
He looked like a very handsome 24-year-old man.
Yeah, they're like, there's no way that Superman would eventually show up on the world scene, and the entire population of Smallville doesn't go, but that's Clark.
I grew up with that guy. Yeah, that was my big problem.
High school with that guy. What the heck?
Here's the thing, Chris. He went around kissing everybody in the world and making them forget.
Well,
that was the thing. Is right before he made his big debut, he kissed everybody in the world.
I mean, like if you wanted to make that canon, the idea of just like The Day Superman Kissed the World. And like, him
Which
going
is
from
the
person to person,
title of
like,
a classic
there's
Silver
not
Age
enough
issue.
mouthwash.
Yeah, I wrote a spec for Smallville when it was still on the air and I was living in LA, which was called Farsight, and it was just in the whole thing was about him developing the telescopic vision. He finally gets it, and also him finally deciding on wearing glasses. I was like, if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to write it in myself. Here's my whole story on how he ends up wearing fake glasses and a disguise. And of course, the TV show never did that. And he did go to Metropolis. And in the last episode, he shows up in the Superman suit or takes a and you're like, great. So everyone in the world knows it's Clark. There he is. I know that guy. It's okay.
There's a lot to enjoy in Smallville, and I totally get the people that are big fans of that show.
Yeah.
I am a lot happier with how Superman and Lois stuck the landing with their finale than what Smallville did.
Agreed. I'm not 100% loving, or I did not 100% love Superman and Lois. So things it did, I was like, what?
But on the last season was on fire.
It was on fire. And that last episode, I cried like a little baby child. And I called Chad. Chad got on a plane. He came up here and he actually cradled me until I stopped crying. It was the sweetest thing. I was like,
emergency hug flight.
It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
I think Smallville Superman and Lois benefited too from this. Those are two completely different eras of television. The Smallville was the era where like, let's just keep this going as long as we can. Stretch it out.
Also, if they had planned it to be a 5-season arc or something, instead of it being, let's just keep going, and now it's year 10, and we're how far past his high school years? Jesus Christ.
Because now it's like the new model seems to be to show run a story and have everything mapped out and have a natural conclusion for the story that's realistically achievable.
Very British. They always plan their seasons.
And if you get renewed after that, great. But if not, we're good.
And if you're a show like Supernatural, you get to that natural ending point, and then they just keep making seasons. And hopefully they're good, but you have blown past your initial game plan.
But so actually, that's not necessarily a bad segue where we're talking about the way that what people wanted out of that character always kinds of morphs, and now we're on the cusp of brand new take, and it feels good, but at the same time I see people that are fans of older ideas of it, like maybe Smallville fans, but also seriously, obviously we brought up the Snyder Bros, and by the way, ladies who love Snyder, I don't mean to lump you in with the bros. But there's a lot of people that seem almost offended by Gunn existing, much less what his take is on the character. And that is just weird. It's like you look at a guy who gave us Guardians 1 through 3 and Peacemaker season 1 and the Suicide Squad, and you go, that's a guy who just shits out some. Like, no, they're all good. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hello?
Yeah. I really think we don't know what's going to, I mean, a lot of people are predicting this is going to do very well, but this is the first time that he has had his hands on a big name like this. Speaking of the Guardians, he took relatively unknown characters from Marvel and turned them into a sensation that everybody loves. This is a character the whole world already knows.
Which is the bigger challenge, I think.
It's a huge challenge, but it's like this might be, something completely astronomical, better than anything he's put out before, which of course is what everybody's hoping. And I think it was very smart move I guess it was Zaslav who hired him to do this whole thing. I mean, it was a risk. But there was no question that Gunn knew his stuff.
Well, here's where my expectations are set right now. I fully admit that my attachment to
Chris, they're high.
Well, yes,
they're high.
But I fully acknowledge that my attachment to the original Christopher Reeve Superman film is heavily saturated with childhood nostalgia.
Oh yeah.
It is that movie is carved into my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be hard for any film to even begin to compete with that. And I fully acknowledge that. That's not what I'm challenging it to do. What I think James Gunn has done which like not that his personal calculation was I have to make Christopher Jones like this, but what he's done that has worked out so well
I've
for
seen
me
some
personally.
interior memos, and that is exactly what they say.
Really?
Yeah, you're
Wow.
you're the one they're aiming at.
I
Okay.
have to see how else I can play this. No,
Yeah.
but what he's done that I think is very smart and works out very well for me personally is I think he's making a movie that looks like it's going to be very, very good. I think he's making a movie that gets the character in a way that I like, and it looks like it's just beautifully produced and well cast and smartly done all the way around. But what makes it not go head to head with the Christopher Reeve film for my affections is as much as that Christopher Reeve film is in a lot of ways very true to the spirit of the comic book character.
Yeah.
Krypton had never looked like that in the comics.
No.
We've never seen a version of the Phantom Zone that was
Yep.
trapping people in a two-dimensional plane spinning through space.
Yes.
Lex Luthor was never surrounded by incompetent boobs and obsessed with real estate. Like there's a lot to that film that is very specific to that movie.
Yeah. And also not something that was, like a natural idea. So in its own way, it took some big swings.
And not that I think everything in this film is going to be exactly the comic books, but James Gunn is obviously embedding his Superman in a much more fully realized DC Comics universe
Yes.
than anything we have ever seen in live action before.
Yes.
The CW shows may have introduced a lot of characters, but there's a lot of distance between the CW versions of those characters and the comic book versions of those characters.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that's a much smaller gap with this film.
I mean, it's I try not to geek out too hardcore over it, but just the thing when they started announcing the lineup of who was in it, and I just couldn't wrap my brain around it, and that's only someone going deep into the benches saying who would work for the story, and you're sitting there going like Metamorpho, who I absolutely love, but the fact that we're going to get a live action Metamorpho before we get this universe's Wonder Woman or Batman, it's stunning. It's just like going, no. Guy Gardner is going to be the first Green Lantern that audiences encounter from this universe, and not Hal or John Stewart. And you're like, okay,
but that's the thing.
I'm there.
I don't think I've never been worried about, because a lot of people express concern like, oh, is he trying to jam too much into this movie? Is there too much going on? Are there too many characters? First of all, James Gunn has proven himself to be a pretty capable storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that the studio was sitting over his shoulder saying, we need Hawk Girl in this. You really need to find a way to put Hawk Girl and Metamorpho in this.
This doesn't feel like the studio at all.
This feels like he had a story to tell. And as in any story, you have an ensemble of protagonists.
Mm-hmm.
You have your protagonist, your supporting cast, you have incidental characters that are there to fulfill a plot function. And he just said, well, we're in the DC universe. Who could this character be?
Yeah, I love that idea.
What would make sense?
And it takes someone who knows those guys to say, this is the ideal I want. And of course, Mr. Terrific. I want Mr. Terrific instead of, fill in the blank someone else. And that's great that he's not beholden to a studio, demand.
Metamorpho is not just going to be randomly in this film. He's going to be in it because whatever Lex Luthor's plan is, he has a way of using what Metamorpho can do as a part of that plan. So it's not going to feel overly busy and overly crowded. It's going to feel like...
couldn't he get Ron Raymond? Come on, Firestorm can transmute elements. He could have been I'm just joking, but yes, absolutely.
Coming soon to HBO Max.
Yeah,
Firestorm.
I cannot wait to see Firestorm, by the way, whenever that happens.
Wouldn't that be great?
So that has not been a concern. I'm looking forward to seeing which of these are bigger parts, which of these are relative cameos.
Yeah.
I hope, are we even going to get to see enough of Hawk Girl to understand clearly, like, is she an alien? Is this an ancient mythological thing.
Yeah, is it the reincarnated or the
The
Thanagarian?
Black Adam movie, like, can you tell me who the heck Hawkman was in that film?
No.
He had a ship, so maybe he's an
Yeah.
alien, but I
Which
don't
is a
know.
shame, by the way, because that actor is really good. And I'm like,
The actor was great, the costumes were great, but I didn't understand who the character was.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I'm just going to predict because Gunn is really he does handle these ensemble casts so well, and like the Suicide Squad is a perfect example of this. That every character gets their time in the story. I have a feeling he probably will have a couple of scenes where Kendra has an opportunity to say, "Oh yeah," and she tells a couple of details that gives us a little bit of her backstory.
The thing I always bring up is Ratcatcher 3 or 2 or whichever number she was in the Suicide Squad. That's not a character I was even aware of. I knew of a Ratcatcher, but I did not know how many there were. And I'm a huge DC fan, so I'm like, who is this? I'm not even familiar. And I don't care if this person, lives or dies, which is part of the Suicide Squad charm. And you're like, oh, some of these characters are going to make it out. But I'll be goddamn if by the end of that movie you don't care about her. He gives her a monologue. He gives her scenes. You care about, what's it? Deschmaltzen's character, Polka Dot
Man. Yeah.
And you're like going, I mean, obviously that's not his backstory from the comics, but still, it is a fully formed character where you're like going, oh my God, I worry about Polka Dot Man.
I was so sad when he died too. And obviously that was the way the story was written.
The mom complex. It's like, that's just weird and great.
I'm a superhero.
But like in Superman, so we've seen from the trailers that Superman is trapped in a cell with Metamorpho.
Mm-hmm.
And presumably, since he's got a big green glowing hand at some point, he's got Metamorpho creating kryptonite to help keep Superman.
That's what Chad caught. I didn't catch it. Yeah, but that's what Chad caught.
But you know what Lex Luthor's mistake is? You know what happens when you do that to Superman and Metamorpho?
Yeah.
Superman can talk to Metamorpho.
Oh, yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like 78 where he talks to Tessmacher.
And that's where these characters start to work in really cool ways. It's like the humanity of who Superman is going to help him win.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I'm wanting from this film, and I think we're going to get it.
Do you think Metamorpho will actually go, okay, but you have to save baby Joey first?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if it's going to be necessarily that bargain, but I think part of why they've got baby Joey in the film, which I was not previously familiar with baby Joey. That's a weird
neither were we.
Me either. I mean, I knew about him and Sapphire. I just didn't know they'd had a kid. Congratulations, you two.
But that Superman saving baby Joey is going to be part of proving to Metamorpho that he's on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Although I was going to say, that even assumes that Metamorpho is, participating willfully.
I think it's blackmail.
Yeah, I think it's blackmail.
Yeah, but but as far as taking the chance to help Superman escape.
Look, I know Rex Mason, and I know Rex Mason's not a bad guy. Okay, he's just not.
But you can see a scene where Superman is like, "Look, I know that Luthor has this over you.
Yeah,
I promise you, if you help me, I will save them."
Yeah. And then he's going to punch out of that cage, which we've already seen him do in the trailer.
Plus, we theorize too that he has to save Crypto as well, because I think Crypto is also.
There's a lot of people in those cells. Like who?
I know. The thing that stumps me is that they all. I mean, you've got Metamorpho and Superman, and then when you pull out, it's all just people.
It looks
it's
like
people
hundreds.
in just normal clothes and stuff.
It's a huge complex. It looks like the underground thing from Cabin in the Woods. I mean, it's huge.
Oh yeah, it does. And you're like, is he just grabbing citizens? Is it just normal metropolitans in there?
Metahumans. I assume he is finding metahumans.
Oh yeah.
So the fact that he has to use Metamorpho to create a kryptonite hand to subdue and torture, I guess who knows what he was doing, but he was interrogating Superman or something.
That means that there's not kryptonite every 20 feet in this world,
right? Well, there's that junior prequel novel that we don't know if it's actually canon to the story, the James's DCU story, but in that we know that he's confronted Metallo, who is introduced as Luthor is responsible for his creation, powered by the kryptonite heart, and so what happened why can't Luthor just make or acquire more kryptonite? There's got to be some reason, right? Why Metamorpho is there, you know?
Yeah, maybe he shoved his only chunk into Corbin.
So I think that's whatever it is. It seems like there's a clever explanation for that in there, which I can't wait to see.
I like the idea of it being really scarce, and Lex Luthor is someone who would have the resources to find what's there, but that doesn't mean he can lay his hands on a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going to Addis Ababa, Mr. Luthor? Just the way he says Addis Ababa.
Has anybody ever made a T-shirt with that quote on it? That's all
No,
it says.
but my favorite Etsy find T-shirt, or maybe it was TeePublic, is my Otisburg.
That's a really nice
T-shirt.
Yeah. I don't think from when I was working on Young Justice, I don't think we ever had Miss Teschmacher in there, but Lex Luthor's chief of security was named Otis.
Oh, perfect. And this movie has an Otis. And maybe they'll actually give us a reason why he surrounds himself with a couple of idiots.
Right.
Like James Gunn's like going, well, Teschmacher's hot.
Do we know Miss Teschmacher is an idiot in this? Because I thought initially we were seeing her in a trailer, and they're like, oh wait, no, that's Cat Grant. Wait, no, wait, that was Miss Teschmacher.
No, you see Teschmacher doing the selfies while Ultraman or the Hammer of Bravia is out the window, and she's like, look at me, snap, snap.
We don't know what the relationship is. I mean, obviously we've seen
arm candy.
We've seen that Lex has a team full of techies, at least, working for him. I don't assume that they're all like trusted right arms. It could just be that she is somebody in his employ, and he's not like, oh yes, I'm going to include you in my inner circle.
Luther clearly, closer to the comic version, or at least the comic version post-Crisis, where Lex is a public figure, and whether or not he's beloved as a benefactor or not, I think the events of this whole thing and Superman showing up is where that image is going to be torn away, and the world will finally know him as a villain, because he has a huge corporation. His branding is everywhere, but I think Superman pushes him over the edge, just his mere existence, and this is where possibly he loses it all. And we still haven't seen him in the battle suit, only in the Best Buy Target exclusive toy set do we see Nicholas Hoult in a Luthor battle suit. Oh.
Well, I had a thought. Obviously, something extremely cataclysmic happens to Metropolis in this movie, unless that's like some alternate universe that we're seeing. I mean, who knows at this point?
I don't know.
But there's that scene that we're talking about in the trailer where Luthor says, they chose him, let them die.
Yeah.
And we just assumed that he's talking about the citizens of Metropolis.
Well, I was going to say, trailer editing is so magical. It could be Metropolis. It could be that foreign country where the kid's raising the Superman. We don't know.
Yes, that's true.
I had a thought while I was editing the breakdown that what if he's not talking about the people of Metropolis? What if he's talking about Ultraman and the engineer who switched sides towards the end of it? And he's ordered something to be destroyed. And they're like, but they're still in there. Like they chose him, let them die.
I love in the previous trailer to the current one, when they're kind of introducing some of the other cast members. Well, it's when you're getting voiceover from Lois's interview of Superman, and she's like, well, before you went into this country, did you touch base with this person? And she mentions the president. And right as she says that, they cut to Lex Luthor, which creates a connection. But do you see him in the White House? Do you see him giving a press conference? I see no indication of that. I think that was a deliberate choice in the editing, but I don't think that's really what the movie is doing.
That could also just be arch social commentary, like criminal White House, get it? Wink, wink. Hello, real world.
That's why I kind of hope that Luthor isn't completely sacked and thrown in prison. This is the first movie, because it would be great to see the slow burn that we got during the John Byrne run.
The idea of him having done all this at the end of the movie,
no pun intended,
not being able to pin it on him would be so infuriating.
Yeah, the not being able to pin it on him, where he still comes out the smartest guy in the room.
That makes him such a great ongoing antagonist. Where it's like,
very true. But I do want the Silver Age thing where we used to see him in prison grays. Like every few issues, he would be in prison grays, and I'm like, and then he breaks out.
Something I'm very curious about as far as James Gunn's larger DC universe plans is he was explaining what his approach to this was, and he said that this is a world where superheroes aren't brand new.
Yeah.
We've known of the existence of metahumans for 300 years.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really specific number that
It's
he
a very
threw out.
specific number. Were you sitting there trying to figure
What
it out?
happened 300 years ago that would have been the beginning of the metahuman age for this world?
That is such a good question, simply because, there are certainly points in the DC history, universe history, that you could kind of go, well, you could go all the way back to caveman days with Immortal Man and Vandal Savage. You could do that. You could, and also the Amazons have been around, but yeah, they've been off on their island. So I mean, that's centuries and centuries, millennia back. So 300 years ago, the 1700s. What happens then?
How long was Abin Sur the lantern of
That's a good question
Earth
too.
Spectre?
I don't know.
Because I don't know, have a feeling they're going to touch on.
He didn't do much for Earth because no one knew what the fuck a Green Lantern was until he crashed and Hal took over.
And someone like Vandal Savage would go back way further than 300 years.
Oh yeah. No,
I mean, there's characters that should exist in the DC universe that are ancient compared to the scale of 300 years. So
I always assume, of course, that all this has been going on, but in the background of human history, to where they just didn't.
Maybe that's
my assumption is
documented.
Something very public happened 300 years ago that everyone.
We're going to get to the bottom of it.
Thing.
We're going to get to the bottom of it next week when James Gunn joins us here on Prodigious Saps.
Along those lines,
I would love to find out.
Along those lines, he's mentioned that he's already working on another script for the DCU. Yeah. That he said it's kind of Superman sequel-y, but not exactly.
Yeah, someone did corner him, said, "Is it a sequel?" He goes,
"It's sort of." So it could. I'm guessing it's a spinoff from.
Well, everyone's
this movie.
speculating it's World's Finest.
It could be an. Oh yeah, that's the big one.
I find it weird that he would premiere his DCU Batman in a Batman Superman film right after that was how the previous version did it.
Hold on, Chris. We got Clayface coming before that. Who's going to take Clayface out if it's not Batman? I assume this Clayface movie will be Batman without a Batman. I guess.
I was thinking the thing that would make the most sense for Gunn to tackle now, because it seems way totally up his alley, would be to do the Terrifics. Because we've got.
Oh, sure.
We've got Mr. Terrific, obviously, and we've got Metamorpho. He could bring those two characters together, introduce Plastic Man.
So you're saying if they do create a Justice League, Mr. Terrific would be like, I'm going to create my own. I don't want to be involved with that.
It's James Gunn. It could be Angel and the Ape. It could be anything.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
And only if it would be. Oh, I think that's a streaming series, my friend. I by the way, again, Mr. Gunn, call me if you need a script writer for Angel and the Ape. I love it. Angel O'Day.
I do storyboards and concept.
Okay, and you get the storyboard gig. It's set. Again, ringy ding ding. Hello. Anyway, I don't know what to expect, which, as I said before, is the thing that excites me about a James Gunn driven DC filmic universe, because it's not taking the steps you would expect. He's just saying, show me your good stories and let's make those movies. He's not literally, he's like going, I never thought about Clayface. Just the script ended up in my lap and it was one of the best things I've read. I'm like, then awesome, bring it. So that means somewhere out there, someone is cooking up just the most amazing Jimmy Olsen is Turtle Boy movie, and we're all going to it's going to be the best thing. We're going, yay, finally Turtle Boy on the big screen.
I would love that so much.
I know.
So, I mean, obviously, we don't know, and this is going to take weird and wonderful shapes that right now we can't predict. One of the things I loved when I was working on Young Justice was that, on the one hand, they were very faithful to the source material of the comics, but because they were picking and choosing from comics over so many decades, which includes such wildly different takes on this material, not just in terms of like eras of continuity, but even just like different tones and styles. There's room for a lot of originality and a lot of like different combinations of things that you're being faithful and original at the same time. And I feel like this is going to be its own flavor of that, because Gunn is obviously unafraid to embrace the comic bookishness of all of this.
He doesn't have to get out because he has embraced comics. He can stay in.
Yes. Yeah. It's
No,
one of our unofficial slogans, Chris. I don't know.
Embrace comics or get out. The thing is, and that it's exactly what I want as a fan. And there are probably people that would rankle at like, why are we going to get an Outsiders movie before, a Legion movie? I mean, again, that's all just down the line and may never happen, but that, I think, will, as you say, it'll take an interesting shape. It won't be standard. The stock thing would have been, and even if they had given me the keys of the kingdom, I would have started with Superman. Then I would have wanted to make sure that Batman and Wonder Woman are taken care of, Flash and Wonder Woman and Green Lantern and all those people, before I ever started thinking about, what about Katana? It's like, finally Black Lightning gets a feature, that would be awesome. But sure, whatever order they come out in, I just want them to be good.
To your point about like the order of things, and bear with me on this. So we've learned that they're using the nickname Justice Gang for the other superheroes, but he's made it clear that is not an official team name. That is a nickname we're using for this collection of characters.
Yeah. Justice Gang.
That's a working name.
Could very well prove to be permanent, though.
But we've seen in the trailer for season 2 of Peacemaker, this like little interview process that has Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and in the center is Maxwell Lord. And it's like, well, so is the team he's putting together the Justice League? Because if we take like Metamorpho after the events of Super, like that's feeling like a very 1990s Justice League International, Justice League Europe.
It's definitely,
totally.
So
it's definitely hinting at it.
So is that the first incarnation of a Justice League? Does a version that has Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman and the big guns come after? I mean, one of the things I'm very curious about, I love that they use the name the Justice Society in Black Adam.
Yeah.
But it kind of bothered me that they apparently were just this group that coexisted with the Justice League, but they answer to Amanda Waller. So how is that different?
Yeah, they're
from
not
the Suicide
talking
Squad,
about,
except they're not criminals. I'm like, no, I want a Justice Society that operated during World War II. That's what I want the Justice Society to be.
Well, then just go watch Stargirl, because that was in that. Which actually
and
I
that
did
was
enjoy.
One of the best things about Stargirl was that.
Yeah, it was.
So,
I think it's clear that Gunn has a plan for how he's getting to the league. Because he's been fielding questions about this recently, and he's like trying to avoid answering the question.
You do know that these heroes, the loosely tied in Justice Gang, are all wearing Maxwell Lord uniforms.
Yes.
So whether or not they have an official name in Guy Gardner's calling themselves the Justice Gang, we don't know. But it does seem that Maxwell Lord, weirdly, since they're establishing Stag, Luthor, and Lord all in the same universe, and I think even Gunn was like, yeah, there's a lot of tech billionaires in the DC universe. It seems like they are trying to brand their own groups, like literally hiring their own superheroes. And so it could be that Maxwell Lord is actively recruiting simply because I can't let Stag or Luthor get the, foot up.
And we know that Cord Industry exists.
Yes, Cord Industry. Yeah. I hope they keep Jaime from that movie. I mean, he was so good. And
apparently that actor they're keeping. Apparently that actor they're keeping.
That's good.
And is it an animated series of Blue Beetle they're doing? I know they've got something in development with Blue Beetle that is that actor, but I forget what it is. Some of the goalposts shift as they develop things.
I don't know, but they announced that Tom King Mr. Miracle animated series was just announced, and I'm like, good Lord, I can't wait for that.
Why am I not working on that? Why did somebody not already hire me to work on that?
There's a couple of things that make me think that Mr. Terrific is going to go off and start his own team after this movie.
Yeah,
one of them is that scene in the trailer, the Peacemaker trailer you mentioned, where
he's not there,
and Gardner, and he's not there. Also, the tech that they're using is shitty and it doesn't work. It kind of makes me think, and I could be just this is me reading into things that into it.
But they have been leaning on Holt Tech, and then
Lord Tech has his own. He's supposed to be a tech giant like Apple. Why doesn't his shit work? And it could be because Mr. Terrific's left with all his patents or something.
Well,
And then
he gets his ability to manipulate minds from Computron, or wasn't it some he linked up with this machine mind thing, and that's how he got his superpower. That was JLI that was explored in that.
Yes.
I don't know.
So
I don't think he's really a genius. I think he's probably just using stuff well.
Yeah. It certainly doesn't look like a genius in the trailer.
No, I just liked him from the early days of those comics where he was just this kind of skeezy, manipulative, media savvy.
The thing I loved about it is how Kevin Maguire, first guy who draws him in the original Justice League, and Kevin Maguire right out of the bat's like, oh my God, what a great artist. And he just decided, I'm going to draw him exactly like
Sam Neill.
What's his name? Sam Neill in Omen 3. Yeah. That is Maxwell Lord. He just drew him exactly like that actor. And you look at every page and go, hey, Sam Neill, how you doing there, buddy? And it's a shame that Sam Neill is now too old, really, to play Maxwell Lord.
Yeah, but if they ever did a story where you met Maxwell Lord's father,
yeah, that's right,
then clearly we know who to cast.
That would be such an inside baseball joke, just for the real nerds. They're going, oh my God, just like in the comics from the 80s. Anyway.
By the way, since we're talking about the Maxwell Lord made costumes for the Justice Gang, I was very pleased to see that my thinking was not off base with the Superman costume, because aside from the discussion of the trunks, the thing that everyone's been like, oh, but it's got bags in it and wrinkles and like, I just like that after so many costumes, and setting aside the Henry Cavill costume, which is beautifully engineered, that wasn't the feeling I wanted from Superman. Like, one of my biggest beefs about the Superman and Lois series was that it looked so much like a padded muscle suit. And like there is a thing with modern superhero comics that movies, I should say, anything live action, that whether it is the actor's real physiognomy or whether it is Hollywood magic, they are trying to make it look like the costume is showing every last little cut muscle,
like
everything.
An illustration of a comic.
And James Gunn is taking the approach of, these are people going to work. These are their uniforms.
Yeah.
They are not trying to make them show off their physiognomy. They're trying to create a recognizable, iconic look that is practical to then run around and do the things that they're doing.
One thing I love from the trailers is, since we had seen all the behind the scenes photos and all that kind of leaked footage, and that's, people were totally bagging on it, like, look at it, it looks like some sort of zip up jumpsuit. And I never thought that. I was like, it looks loose and comfortable. Then you watch it in motion, and I keep thinking, well, here's how good the costume designer was. It's both. And every time there's a strain, like an extreme pose, like he's holding something up or he's doing one of these poses, it all gets tight. It's when he's sort of standing still that it looks comfortable. But in motion, it looks exactly like it does in the comics, without all the sculpted in layers of muscle stuff.
Have you ever seen a spy photo of location filming from an upcoming superhero film?
Oh yeah.
Where the costume looked its best. That, I mean, right. Do you remember like the first look that we got at the Robert Pattinson bat suit? Those shots of the stunt double on the motorcycle.
Yes, and no cape, because they were going to CG it in. Yeah,
what is that? Well, in the movie it looked fine, didn't it?
I will say this:
in the movie,
when I worked at Warner Brothers as a tour guide back in the day, I was on set when they were filming a little bit of Raimi's Spider-Man, the first one, on the Warner Brothers lot, because they were using the New York street. Not a Warner Brothers film, but Sony said, "Can we?" And Warner Brothers said, "Sure, give us money." So I got to watch. I leaked to Ain't It Cool News. I was the first person to leak to Ain't It Cool News what the suit looked like. And it wasn't Toby filming that the first time I saw it. It was a stunt guy. and it was one of the scenes in the middle of the street where he's webbing a bunch of villains, like muggers and stuff. And I was really close to the suit, and I was just like, damn, if it doesn't look good up close. But yes, when you are there, you're seeing the seams, you're seeing the where it gets together. He popped the eyes out. I was like, oh my God, you can literally take the lenses out just so you can see the guy's actual eyes. And it's a solid face, so it doesn't matter who's underneath it, it'll still have the same shape. So it's like, oh, that's clever. It looked great up close, but yes, it is a little bit like the magic's not there, because if you were on the street and a guy came and saved you, you would smell his BO, you'd see the zipper up the back of Spider-Man's suit. It would not be this magical experience. Luckily, superheroes don't exist, or sadly, superheroes don't exist. So we see these idealized versions, and we were talking about the boots having that seam up the back that you can see in the trailer, and I was like, I was half convinced they would digitally take those out before the movie aired. I was like, oh, that's probably pre-production kind of stuff. And Chad's like, no, I think they'll probably leave them in. And they might. I mean, it doesn't look bad.
I think there are some things, some details, like, that's how the boot closes up. Like, no, that's okay. Superman has to put his boots on. It's okay for there to be a closure.
You see the straps of that neck piece that he has. You can actually see that when he's talking.
But I think what's going to happen is there are going to be shots where it's like, oh, it's that sleeve is really bunching up in that shot. Let's take that down a little bit. I think they're going to go and do like shot by shot. Like, let's just touch that up, because I know there's a lot of stuff
doing
where.
Yeah.
I was watching the trailers that come out. It looks the suit does look better. Like we're saying, it looked better, and it looked great in the shots from Cleveland last summer.
Yeah,
looked remarkably good compared to. I mean, based on what we were just saying, it's like, wow, that suit looked great right off of the paparazzi shots. But it does look better in the movie generally. Than
they probably are
pictures.
Going shot to shot and doing a little cleanup. Maybe
that doesn't necessarily mean they're CGI, but they could be. So I don't know.
Even if they were 100% replacing it all the time, which is there, I don't think they are. I like the approach of, well, let's put him in a suit so that everybody on the set gets the experience of, he looks like Superman. He doesn't look like a great guy in a great PJs with reference dots. And also it gives you then reference for, all right, on the day under these lighting conditions, here's what it looked like.
Here's how
now,
this
if we want to tweak
something,
we've got reference built in for how that should look.
Because I don't think, in my mind, nothing has looked better on set than that picture, those shots of Mr. Terrific and Superman. I was about to say Mr. Superman. Superman standing on the streets of Cleveland, looking up at something on the wall, and like they're investigating something. It was one of the first day of shooting shots.
And Superman standing side by side.
Fantastic. The cape looked beautiful. It was like, oh my God, I'm looking at a comic panel.
And it looks real world.
How good is that face to face with Superman and Guy Gardner in the new trailer, though? Like,
the best thing.
So great.
Yeah. That's the stuff that, again, it's just, as we went back to the beginning, one of the things I think he's getting the character right. And he's writing clever, crisp James Gunn dialogue, and I'm all for that. But it is really, like we were talking about, the deep dive into we're in that universe, and it's already in motion.
Yeah.
It's not something where it's the origin story of all superpowers everywhere. If the DCU had actually started with Captain America First Avenger and said, here's our first hero, and then they go up through the years and go, oh, there's Captain Marvel, and now there's Iron Man, that would have been a weird journey. But this one is just saying, no, this stuff's been in, you're coming into the middle of the story. I'm like, great. I can't wait to this is a universe where I'd love to see prequels. It's like, who was fighting in World War II? Please tell me, Mr. Gunn.
That's the thing. I mean, we might get a World War II Justice Society, and whether they get their own movie or TV show, I could totally see some other movie like, well, we're going to have a big old flashback to, like, let's see the
if
Justice
they do Frankenstein and the Bride, you could follow them through like centuries, because he's been chasing her for centuries, pre-Creature Commandos. You could totally have David Harbour as Frankenstein being horrible and killing people, but it would be great.
The idea of, like, they're doing stuff and they run into G.I. Robot and they run into Sergeant Rock, and then all of a sudden here comes the freaking Justice Society of America. Like, oh my God.
God, I'm so.
And someone goes, wait, are those the Black Hawks? And they fucking are. Oh, I'm sorry. I got real excited. I got real excited, and I'm sorry.
I was so excited to hear about the Sergeant Rock movie, which rumors have been
It fell
inconsistent.
apart.
Well,
or at least they lost the 2 guys that were going to be playing.
Right. I have a feeling they'll work it out. But if they do that, we're probably going to get to see the early iteration of G.I. Robot again. As part of that.
Maybe
team.
a throwaway Easter egg to Haunted Tank. You see a tank that has a Confederate flag on it. Boy, that won't play well. Anyway,
before the Justice League, before the Justice Society, there was Enemy Ace.
Enemy Ace, the Hammer from Hell. God damn it. I love all of this stuff. And maybe we'd get an actually good Jonah Hex movie.
Ooh.
Did they announce that?
They made one. Terrible.
Oh, no, I'm thinking of there was some rumors that there's going to be an Adam Strange show, I think.
Oh, well,
right?
Adam Strange is one of my faves of all time.
I haven't heard about that.
And if they made that a period piece, like what if that was Silver Age? What if he was literally a 60s archaeologist bouncing to Rand and coming back? Oh my God, that'd be
one of the things. I'm sorry, I keep bringing up Young Justice, but
please
I've had a lot of experience with it. One of the things they did you see what they had Adam Strange on Young Justice in a couple of episodes?
I did not see that episode.
Cool. They did a story like you go to Ron with Adam Strange. And one of the tropes that runs through Young Justice is that Miss Martian uses her telepathic powers to not let people communicate at range, but also translate for people. Up until that point, Adam had not been able to learn the Rand language. So he has this like budding romance with Ilana. They've never been able to
but they
speak
don't understand
to each other.
That's great.
It was
that's
fun.
great.
Yeah,
we have to watch that.
Bit.
What season is that?
That is they introduced the character in the first episode of the second season, and then the second episode is a story mostly set on Rand.
Okay, cool.
Rand or Ron, however you want.
I need to get back into watching.
I always say Rand, but then again, I don't know what's proper.
No, don't get me started on Ra's al Ghul
or
Ra's al Ghul. Oh,
yeah.
So
the Demon's Head.
You remember when they had those wonderful Who's Who in the DC Universe comics?
Which I owned all of them.
I loved those. And for the first several issues, they would have a pronunciation guide for some of the more exotic names featured. And I was like, I'm finally going to get to find out how you pronounce that name, because this predated...
Yeah, it turns out Batman. You kept saying Botman. I like Botman. That
Botman. But predated any adaptation outside of comics. So like finally they dropped the pronunciation guide, I think 1 or 2 issues before they got to R.
Oh my God!
No idea why. So so it wasn't until the character showed up in Batman the Animated Series, and between the fact that it was Batman the Animated Series and was amazing, and then the fact that like David Warner's voice is just burned into my brain as the voice of that character.
Was such a great casting.
So is that why there doesn't seem to be consensus on how to pronounce the name of the sun that Krypton is orbiting?
Oh, you mean
Rao? Their sun god Rao, yeah. But some people say Rao. I've heard it both ways.
Well, they're wrong.
That's what I mean.
I always liked that character. He showed up on the Peacemaker, the character called Vigilant. I like Vigilant. The Vigilant. He's so crazy with the guns.
Hey, look, we all know from Marlon Brando that Superman is the last son of the planet Krypton.
Krypton, that's right.
He's the only one that said that. And Jor-El had a speech impediment here on Krypton.
In that movie, there's at least one other person who says Krypton.
I have to think that Richard Donner was fully aware that was happening and it was wrong. And he was just like, it's Brando. Pick your battles. Pick your battles.
Yes, exactly. At least he showed up.
Yeah. At least he doesn't.
At least he
isn't telling me that he should be a green bagel today.
Yes. At least he got fitted for the wig.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is a legend or not, but apparently it was because of him that the S is the crest of L at all, because he went, I want the S on my costume. And they're like, but you're not Superman.
But you're not Superman.
That's the story. So they came up with this clever way to work it in.
And actually, it still is one of the best, because here's the problem. Always, it depends on which version of the origin. It's like Lois seems to have named him in most versions, but in the earliest days, he shows up with an S on his chest and says, "I'm Superman," which means you got to imagine that Clark was like going, "I'm a real Superman. Oh, hold on a second. And how about a big S? I like it if it's a Kryptonian image that just looks like an S," and she made the jump and said Superman, which in 78, that's what she does.
It's very clever.
It's like, no, this is actually a Kryptonian symbol.
Yeah.
I know it looks like an S. That's not an S. Sorry.
I like the way too that he when Jor-El says here in this fortress of solitude.
I don't know. Yeah. Here in this,
that's a great little
hall
Justice.
oats.
I was picturing like some kind of robot chicken skit where he can't think of the word solitude, and Clark keeps interrupting him. Solitude? No, that's not it.
Yeah, Fortress of Lonely Times. Fortress of Lonely Times. And that becomes a thing. Well, they stole it from Doc Savage, but we're going to let it go.
Right.
Because Fortress of Solitude's an awesome name.
Man of Bronze, Man of Steel. It's all,
I know. He writes his diary on plates of metal, and he burns it with his heat vision and Kryptonian. That's how he writes his diary.
Oh.
I just always love these Silver Age ideas where he's like,
by the way, speaking of heat vision, first of all, I love.
Did you enjoy that sequence?
I do love the way the heat vision looks. It looks awesome. Part of me does still kind of miss the days where it was an invisible heat beam. This is a little bit of a Cyclops optic blast kind of thing, but whatever. It looks cool.
Maybe it's all about intensity. Maybe he can do the invisible.
Yeah, we haven't seen. Yeah.
But I could be totally off base on this, but I have a theory about what's up with the red around his eyes in some of those trailer shots. In the Justice League animated series, this doesn't happen to Superman, but ironically, Superman does it to Darkseid when they're fighting.
Yes.
Darkseid is powering up an optic blast, and Superman
his
covers
Omega
his eyes,
beams.
and then it explodes back in his face.
Oh,
now,
I wonder if that's
why an optic blast, whether it's heat vision or Omega beams, would have a different effect at point blank range than at range. I don't know. But
why would it affect the person that's generating it at all?
Yeah,
it's like Godzilla's throat being burned from his like,
when it's one of those things where it's like it feels very visceral and cool and badass.
Yeah, that's why it's there.
Made it one of his heat vision blasts kind of blow up in his face. That would definitely give you that kind of.
Yeah.
And there's I've seen one shot where it looks very pronounced and fresh, and then it looks like okay, it's fading from its peak intensity.
Chad was thinking maybe it was when he got hit in the face by a beam from
Ultraman.
Who we're assuming is Ultraman.
It's weird that it would hit him specifically there.
Specifically right there, right.
Unless they're doing a beam battle and it just came all the way back.
Right. Beam battle is what I want more than anything.
I was going to say, along the lines of the fading of the parent burn marks around his eyes. That one of those spots that came out just recently where it looks like he's back in Luthor's office and he's saying that's one of my greatest strengths, and I'm assuming he's talking to Luthor. You can kind of see a faint like it's fading there. It's still there,
okay,
but it's like way fainter than it is in the battle shot. So I wonder if that's a wrap-up scene after that, like he's confronting Luthor.
Well,
after
I think the whole fight with the Raptors and Metropolis splitting open and Kaiju could all be connected. And once it's resolved, Superman is like, I know who's behind this, goes to Luthor and is like, you fucker. I assume that's a dialogue. You fucker, you fucked with the wrong Kryptonian.
Yeah.
And then and he's like, oh, you need some Visine for your eyes? He's going to do that because Luthor's a dick. Again, I'm writing the scene, but it's going to be good.
By the way, I had a theory that I thought was a great theory, and then I debunked my own theory.
Hey, congratulations! What was
it? in that way that trailers with the editing, like you don't know if this line of dialogue actually is part of that scene, if it's referencing what you think it's referencing, if these are in the right order. Yeah,
exactly.
So we know there's a scene in the fortress where Luthor has invaded. He's gotten in somehow and has access to stuff. And you see him walking up to the platform with the big ring, the console.
Yeah.
And then we also have the scene where Superman has been wounded, and that appears to be the machine he's taken over to get the infusion of solar energy to heal him. And I thought,
yeah.
What if Luthor had sabotaged that?
Ooh.
So they take him to get healed, and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do.
Well, but the robots
killed
are
all
all
the robots.
But not only that, but it's Krypto that had dragged him to the fortress. And if that fight had already happened, like, that doesn't make sense. So, like, that's a cool idea. No, it doesn't work.
This whole movie is going to be about justice for number 4, clearly his favorite robot, and he dies. That's the one he's crying over.
Yeah.
Alan Tudyk, that's one DC job. That's a one and done, because number 4, it looks like, is on his way out.
Yeah, that's two things. I hope that the fortress does not remain somewhere where Luthor knows where it is. And also, I want the robots to be rebuilt. Damn it. I want them to come back.
The nice thing about robots is they can be rebuilt.
Yeah. We know maybe not all of them died. Maybe number 12 survives, the most recent one.
Maybe she was adorable.
Yeah.
2 things are going to happen. This will be the credit cookie after the end credits. One, Superman will be back at the fortress, and we'll have rebuilt the robots. And they'll be like, now there's one more thing I have to go do. This is the one I haven't been looking forward to. And he shows up at the security facility where they're holding Lex Luthor. And he goes in and just plants a big wet one on his lips.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the whole thing. The miracle kiss, man. I can't with that. I love 1 and 2 so much, but the kiss to make us forget is just the stupidest thing.
I mean,
and comics are, by and large, they're ridiculous. The stuff that happens is ridiculous, but yeah, the forgetful kiss, I just can't deal with.
It all comes down to, don't you wish you could revisit the reality where Richard Donner had directed both films and got to do what he wanted to with both of them?
Because, I want to be in that timeline.
Because, they would have found a different ending for one, and the turning back time would have happened in the second one.
Yeah. That's what I want to ask Kevin Rubio, the filmmaker who did Troops.
I know Kevin.
He also watches this channel. And
Hi, Kevin.
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, well, no, he's friends with he's told us he's friends with Michael Thaw. So that's one that is one question I kind of like to pick his brain. Say, have you guys ever talked about that? But because I know Michael Thaw tried to get that out of Donner and Mankiewicz when they were doing the Donner cut, but they were like, nah, let's just go with what we shot.
There's 100 questions I would love to ask Richard Donner if I could magically go back and ask him those questions. But like the one that might be at the top of my list, just because it would have a simple answer, and I'm dying to know. It's like, why in the world did you make the special control crystal that was put in the ship that built the fortress and did all the narrative special stuff in the story? Why did you make that green? Because everybody thinks it's freaking kryptonite.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not. It's not meant to be kryptonite, but I don't see how you make that.
It could have been a golden shiny
anticipate
thing.
That people are going to think it's kryptonite, because like you have a thing from Krypton that's green. Like,
where's your brain going?
Yeah,
you're going to kryptonite. Is what you're going to. The one question I would ask him is, when Krypton's blowing up, why don't we also see an adult Superman walking around? Because we saw that in the Silver Age. He got to go back in time and was on Krypton hanging out with his parents when it blew up. And where's his Kryptonian girlfriend, Lyra Law, who was the Marilyn Monroe of Krypton? Where is she in that movie? And then I throw things. I just overthrow the table and walk out and go, we're done, Donner.
But even within the first movie, they contradict, like, the projection of Jor-El in the fortress says, by this time I've been dead for many thousands of your Earth years.
Thousands of your years.
But then Luthor talks about how long it's been since Krypton exploded, and it's like it's been a couple decades.
28 years.
Yeah. It's like,
that was...
Pick one.
Right. That was one thing that Mankiewicz did not quite iron out very well. He wasn't a really good science fiction writer.
Well,
there's some problems with the time travel with his stuff too.
I'm just surprised that was glossed over by anyone that reads the script. When you're getting ready for production, you do iron out little things like that. Like, let's make sure that's one line that could have been tinkered with and fixed.
That problem in the Donner cut with him going back to humiliate the trucker at the end of the movie. And it doesn't make any sense in the Donner cut because he just turned back time.
Taking revenge for something that never happened.
Well, that's how the original script was written too. If you find it, that's how Mankiewicz wrote that script.
Yeah.
So
in his version, though, doesn't Superman actually punch through that trucker and remove his viscera and then just throw it around the room?
It is a much more his version of the fight was more. They actually do go outside, and I think Clark actually gets a couple punches in before he's taken out. So that was, I guess, those are some changes they made on the set, I guess, to shorten that fight.
Well, they couldn't go outside; it was too expensive because
they were on a soundstage.
It makes sense though if Clark has never in his life thrown a punch without superpowers. He's not gonna.
Yeah, that scene works so well.
Yeah,
I think it's brilliant. Yeah.
Where he's just thrown. It's not necessarily that he's weak or wimpy. It's just that's a new experience.
Right,
Pain, and then the whole thing of like, wow, that's my blood.
I really do think
I've never seen that.
That was like a style. That was a choice they made on. I'm guessing it seems like that was a choice that they collaborated on. That maybe Reeve and Donner said, he probably doesn't know how to fight because how would he know?
Well, the only thing I'm hoping is A, the movie's good, and B, that David Cornsweet never does anything objectionable for the rest of his life.
Yeah, please don't.
Because please be a good dude. Don't get Me Too'd or anything. Just be decent. And from what I understand, he's a nerd and a delightful young man. Yeah. So I'm like, good.
Yeah,
just be that.
Yeah, everything I've seen him in is we've been
Cinema Superman does terrible things with animals. I'm like, no, don't.
As we've been getting all the press in the big promotional ramp up to the release, everything I see him and you hear him talk, you're just like, yeah, you're Superman walking around. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's
they found
amazing.
the right guy. This is gonna be amazing.
Yep.
Did you see the thing with this is I guess this entertainment reporter, I think for like a comic book website, had done a post to Twitter. That's right, I'm calling it Twitter, where he's like going, I have new information on Superman movie, but sorry guys, I have to go to the hospital. My wife's giving birth. And then David Cornsweet replied to that. It was like going, hey man, good luck. And here's the thing, just concentrate on this. It's going to be okay. Like writes this post about it. And then the guy writes back like, David, thank you so much. And here's a picture of it all happened. Everything went great. And then David writes back again. He's like going, she's beautiful. Congratulations. And I tell you something, he goes, just get ready for those 2 a.m. like wake up calls. Because he's a dad too. But it was just so wholesome. It's like, this is a guy who doesn't even know. And he's like going, oh, congratulations on this. And like, everything's going to work out just fine. God, dude, solid.
Yeah.
Solid as rock. Like that song.
Love it.
Anyway, you're excited, Chris. I'm excited. Chad's excited. And that money is well spent. You were talking about how much they spent on promotion. It worried me that they've waited so long because we had a teaser, we had a trailer, and that's basically had a couple of shots. And this month, it's just been nonstop. It's just been one thing after another. Little teasers and snippets of the behind-the-scenes thing, like that cute deal with Jimmy saying, like, welcome to the Daily Planet. This is where I work. And then the bit with him and Clark where he's like going, hey, Clark is like, hey, Jimmy, and then turns back and he doesn't have his glasses on. They're like, where's Clark?
Yeah, who are you? I love it.
I'm optimistic for the quality of the film. I am delighted that now that we're in the final stretch and the release of the film is infinite, they have opened the fire hose on promotion.
Yes.
But it really feels like, not to get political, but with everything going on in the world, everything that people are stressed about, that this could be catching the timing zeitgeist of like the movie we want right now. The message we want in the world right now is this movie. It's escapist, but it's positive. It's aspirational. It's about people choosing to do the right thing. This could be beyond our...
That Father's Day clip that they also released.
Yeah.
It just breaks you up. And he just goes, I love you, Pa. At the end, I'm like, forget it, man. I'm going to go weep over there in the corner. Jesus. I'm okay.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's good stuff.
Yeah, they've got my money already. And I'm Chet and I are both going on the 8th as part of that Prime thing. So I can't wait to see it a little earlier. Chris, what are you working on these days? This is the plugs part of the podcast.
Well, in addition to just random odds and ends, I also am still working on Skull Island, a comic based on the legendary MonsterVerse version of King Kong. It is a continuation of the Skull Island animated series from Netflix. There was a 4-issue series that starts coming out at the end of June called Return.
Do you get to draw a Kurt Russell character?
No,
as part
it,
of
it
Monarch?
is not based on Monarch. It is based on the Netflix Skull Island series.
I thought that was all tied in.
They're in the same continuity. This is just different characters at a different time period.
Okay.
There's a 4-issue comic that's called Return to Skull Island, and now I am finishing up the art on the second 4 issues of that, which is Escape from Skull Island.
Oh man, that sounds like so much fun.
You get to draw
King Kong and
really
monsters.
big apes.
Yep.
Dude, that's awesome. Anyway, it's a pleasure, Chris. Will you come by again when the movie's out?
Absolutely.
And we'll talk about it?
Happy to talk about that. Happy to talk about other things. It's just great to get to chat with you guys. Thank you for helping me back on the show.
Absolutely,
it's
man.
Awesome.
We will do it again and again.
Next time we won't have Chad. All right. See you later, everybody. Bye.
Bye.